this very heavy problem, which was the area of the teaching of the religion, the teaching of, in a sense, what it is, or at least was in those days, to be a Thai person, which was to be somebody that took the teaching of Buddhism seriously. And because this teaching about merit, demerit, or virtue and evil, about heaven and hell, about birth and death, about the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, I had been taking this very seriously and had taken the teaching itself as a challenge to be responsible for myself, to search for the meaning, significance of life, the use of life. And this had become an extremely onerous and burdensome problem for me. And it was in this area that Luang Por Tien challenged me. He challenged me to see the actuality of this, so that to go beyond doubt. Tien said that to solve the problem of the meaning of all these things that have been weighing upon me, there was a form, a method, a technique that would be very, very useful. It was a very direct way to seeing through all these dilemmas and all the problems, to seeing the actuality of what all these things refer to. And this method, this form, involved using the movement of the body, which is the form that we use here now every day. And at that time, using these bodily movements in the walking meditation and in sitting and turning up the hand and raising the arm and moving the hand down to the abdomen and so on, this did not appeal to me at all, because I had been practicing sitting in half lotus with my hands in my lap, one hand upon another, and I had become used to, attached to that form, that method, and this change of method didn't appeal to me, so I felt quite some resistance to it. I really didn't like it. Since Luang Por Tien saw my resistance, my aversion to changing from the form, the style of practice that I was used to, he came and he again challenged me. He took my hand and challenged me and asked, at that time I was a layman, he asked me, how much do you earn a month? And I said, a month I earn such and such an amount, say 1,000 baht. And Luang Por Tien said, well, please, if you come and you walk according to my teaching and do the movements, the arm movements according to my teaching, if you practice using movement, you practice according to my teaching, my indication as to how to develop awareness, how to develop knowing of oneself, then if you don't know anything at all, if you have no result, if you don't have any development in your understanding, then I will pay you 1,000 baht for every month that you practice. Accept Luang Por Tien's challenge under those terms. And so I came to do the walking and the sitting practice according to his instructions. But as I was doing this, all I had was problems. I had thought, my mind, if you want to call it that, or thought, was kept on coming up and saying, what's the use of doing this, and why should I do this? And I would go back to sitting still in the half lotus with my hands resting upon each other, as I was accustomed to do. And then I would try to struggle against this and go back to doing what I had undertaken to do, to sitting and doing the arm movements. And then I would come back again to sitting still in the samatha practice again. And so for these 10 days, the first 10 days I was practicing, all I had was this conflict inside myself, this continual conflict sense of this was useless, and the way I'd been doing it was better, and going back to that, and then struggling to come back to the way Luang Por Tien indicated, and then not being able to maintain that. So all I had was conflict. When we just live comfortably doing the things we're accustomed to do, we have no problems, or we feel we have no problems. But when we come to practice the developing of sati, then we seem to have a lot of problems, and I seem to have a lot of problems at that time. And all this conflict and all these disturbing thoughts and sense of agitation and restlessness and worry. So I felt was carrying a great burden. And this continued until at one time, one day I decided that this was stupid, that I was just going round and round in my thoughts and making myself suffer, and that I was just going to settle down and do what Luang Por Tien said. Luang Por Tien said to raise a hand and be aware of it, feel the movement, to walk and to feel the movement, and when thought occurs, to return to the movement, to cut away the thought by returning to the movement, to come back to oneself, and that I wasn't going to sit around thinking, trying to work out what was the correct way, thinking my way out of things, what was the cause and what was the result, and was this in accordance with the real teaching. And I wasn't going to be caught up in all this thinking anymore, but I was going to really, really be with the feeling, be with the movement, be with the awareness. And very quickly, once I'd made that determination and I started doing it, I started to collect myself and started to relax very, very quickly. So I turn the hand up and I feel it, and I'm satisfied with that. And I raise the hand, and there's feeling, there's awareness, and I'm satisfied with that. So I see that when I come to develop sati, what I get is sati. And so there's no avenue for thoughts to come in and disturb me, because I'm satisfied with the sati. That I develop sati in the present, and I get sati in the present. So I become satisfied with being in the present. And so this was the beginning of my practice of developing sati. As I say, this was the beginning of my practice, and I could see that when there was movement and there was awareness of the movement, then that was seeing the body. I was seeing the body. I wasn't seeing the body with the eye in the head. I was seeing the body with the eye of awareness. And so I practiced in this way. Luang Por Tien came and asked me, how is it going? What are you doing? And I said that I was watching the body. I was seeing the body by being aware, by feeling, by being aware of the feeling, by knowing the feeling. And Luang Por said that was correct, and to do this very, very much, and other things not to be interested in, not to be concerned with other things, just to be interested, just to be concerned with seeing the body in this way, not seeing with the eye in the head, but seeing with the eye of awareness. So this is the way I practiced, doing this very, very much. And we see that when there is the teaching and we practice in accordance with the teaching, then we understand what is being said, what the teacher says. We know the meaning, because our practice is in accordance with that. So now I was fully committed. I had this sense of confidence and commitment, because I knew what I was doing in this practice. Just in this way, being with, knowing, feeling the movement of the body, and I did this a very, very great deal. And so this is the way we practice. We know the movement of the body, we feel, we have awareness of the movement of the body. And when the mind moves, then we know the movement of the mind. We don't have to look at the mind or look for the mind or stare at the mind. But because we are aware of the body, then when the mind moves, we're aware of it too. So this is the way I practiced until I received an answer from nature, from practice. And I saw clearly that there are two things. There is the body and the mind. Not the body is a thing and the mind is a thing. There is the body acting and the mind acting, what we call rupa acting, nama acting. Acting means appearing, manifesting as changing phenomena. So the body manifests as changing phenomena, the mind manifests as changing phenomena, bodily phenomena and mental phenomena. Formerly I had thought that everything was myself, that satisfaction, dissatisfaction, tiredness, pain, all these phenomena, all these manifestations of body and mind, I thought was me and myself. So I had taken them very, very personally. I had appropriated them to myself. And now I saw that these things were just rupa acting, rupa manifesting, rupa moving, and mind manifesting, mind acting, mind moving, mind presenting itself as this and as that, body presenting itself as this and as that. So that because of I had this questioning, then this questioning was underlying my practice, this uncertainty, doubt was underlying my practice. Then the practice led to the arising of an answer. So nature answers us. Nature gives us the answer, which is called conventionally insight. We call insight or the arising of panya. So this is the first stage of the arising of panya in this practice of developing sati. It is natural that we, in the practice, when we arrive at knowledge, then it is something like coming into an inheritance. It is like finally coming upon something that is ours, belongs to us, is our due. So it is like finally getting proof or evidence of something that we have been uncertain about, or like receiving something like a gift of some kind or an inheritance of some kind. Seeing body, seeing mind, or seeing body acting, seeing mind acting. I'm not talking about seeing like the ordinary eye sees, nor the kind of awareness that we have in the beginning stage of practice. But this kind of seeing is a seeing with comprehension, a seeing with knowing the nature of the thing. So we know the nature of bodily acting, bodily phenomena. We know the nature of mental phenomena. Formerly, we are taking these things as being ours, as being ourself, as constituting us. Now we see that these are natural phenomena. This is nature acting according to nature, like the trees growing around us or the flies buzzing around us. They are natural phenomena arising and passing according to natural conditions. And so seeing this, it is like a falling away of affliction. It is like things that we had believed before, we no longer believe. They no longer have this power over us. So all the various forms of greed, which means attraction, and of hatred, which means aversion, inclination away from, resistance, and of delusion, all the forms of confusion and uncertainty and dullness, all these begin to fall away and lose their power, because we see that these are not us. We no longer take these things personally. We see these things with detachment. So we see the impermanence of them. We see that they are things that come and go without any stability. They are not stable things. They are not things that can be permanent. They have the nature of being intrinsically, inherently, necessarily impermanent, necessarily subject to cessation at any time according to their nature. And so we no longer see them as us. We no longer see them as something that we can identify with, we can absorb into and become. And so they lose their power over us. They no longer have that power of being believable, being something that we take very seriously as being very real and very important and very necessary. The time when I knew Rupa and Nama, knew Rupa and Nama, knew the nature of the body in action, the nature of the mind in action, Luang Por Teean came at that time and asked me how it was going, and I said that I knew this now, and that I knew Rupa, I knew Nam, I knew what virtue was, what goodness or merit was, and what evil or demerit its opposite is. So I really knew this now. And Luang Por said that Luang Por Teean said that the person who doesn't know Rup Nam is crazy, is not sane. And I said that's true. Formerly I was not sane. Luang Por Teean said at that time that if you practice a very great deal, you practice more and more, then there are other things that you can understand. And I told him that I had understood these other things already. I'd understood anicca, dukkha, anatta. I'd understood the nature of conventional truth or conventional realities or conventionality and so on, that I had understood all of these things which I had been doubtful and confused about and uncertain about. Now they were all very clear to me. So Luang Por Teean said, okay, then now continue the practice using the movement as before, but now watch the mind, now develop in the mind, now make the mind the center of development, so that you see the mind moving, which is to see the mind, mental phenomena arising. You see this faster and faster. So I practiced the developing of awareness of the mind directly, and at that time my practice went very, very well, so that there was great deal of energy and great deal of confidence, and whenever the thought arose, there was awareness of the thought, And whenever there was no thought, there was awareness of the body as it moved, and so the body was moving all the time. Whenever thought came, the thought was known very, very quickly. And so this develops according to a natural law, so it has its own time of development. So according to this natural law, natural process of development, this development occurred in me until I came to see thought, to really see thought, not to see thought the way one sees thought, or you can call seeing thought in the beginning stage of practice before really knowing Rupa Nam, and not the way you see thought when you know Rupa Nam now and you are very aware of thought very quickly, and you really know thought very, very quickly, but to really see thought, to really penetrate thought, to penetrate the nature, the characteristic, the essential deceptiveness of thought. And this penetration is a falling away of all the power of thought. So what was very, very subtle is now very, very coarse and very evident. And there is the arising of a sense of great shame that we have been living under the power of this thing all this time. So from that moment on, from that penetration of thought, penetrating the nature, the characteristic of thought, the falling away of all the power of thought, then because of the power of thought has fallen away, it has lost its power, then all the forms of greed, hatred and delusion, of all the kinds of defilement, they also begin to lose their power because they have no basis, because their basis is in thought. And without thought there, they are swept away like a river sweeps away a crumbling riverbank. So I can remember very, very clearly to this day that penetration of thought, that seeing of thought in the full sense, the full sense of seeing of thought, which was in the year 1968, 2511, 20 years ago this year. And ever since that time, when you really see thought, you have no more need to ask others what is correct and incorrect, what is true and not true, because you can answer yourself. You can know the answer within yourself. So the teaching of the Buddhas is available within yourself. The path is available within yourself. And you can learn from nature the answer to anything that you want to know. So you have absolute confidence and you are independent in this teaching. This seeing of thought is the changing of the mind, and it is a radical, the true changing of the mind, which is available to every human being. Every human being can reach this changing of mind, or if you like to use more formal terms, changing of lineage. And that all the things that we have lived subject to formerly, we are no longer subject to. All the forms of suffering, of unpleasantness, of greed and anger, all the forms of misery and sorrow. We discover freedom. We discover the freedom from all of these things. We discover the freedom from all conditions of body, all conditions of mind. We discover the freedom from being the recipient, being the owner, the experiencer, from being. So this is available to every human being who wishes to undertake the developing of awareness of themselves. From my experience, I can say without any doubt at all that any human being who is in a state of indecision or doubt, or has any questioning, or wishes to really understand religion or virtue and understand what is harmful and not harmful, know what is meritorious and demeritorious, know about heaven and hell, know about birth and death, your own birth, your own death. Any human being who really wishes to know about these things, they can embark on a course of action by which they can know about these things for themselves. So the knowing, which the beginning of the knowing I call here the seeing of thought, this penetration of thought, this is to be known only for oneself, by oneself, in oneself, for oneself. So it cannot be communicated, but every human being who has the wish to understand and is determined to understand their own life can reach this point through the use of kammatthana. So kammatthana means kamma means action. So we have to act, we have to do, we have to develop a practice. And the practice is a doing, an acting. Kammatthana means literally the field of work, the field of action, the field of activity. So the field of activity at the beginning is the body, and the mind is present with the body, so the mind is in awareness also. This is called satipatthana. So any human being that embarks upon this practice of satipatthana, of developing awareness of the body and awareness of the mind, whatever techniques they develop, whatever techniques they wish to use, okay. There are many techniques, many forms, many ways of doing this. But as long as we are developing in accordance with developing awareness of bodily phenomena, awareness of mental phenomena, then there is a way, there is a path of development, and there is a conclusion, there is a point at which all the problems are answered, and we are freed. With the answering of these problems, not a conceptual or intellectual answering, it is not just thought answering, but these problems are solved. So all the problems of virtue and evil, the virtue of the world and the evil of the world, the birth and death of ourself, or if you want, the birth and death of the world, of heaven and hell, here and now or elsewhere, of religion and what religion really is, all of these are completely resolved. And with this resolution, then there is the falling away of all the states that afflict us, of suffering and not suffering, of satisfaction and dissatisfaction, of wishing and not wishing, of hoping and not hoping, of agitation, of anxiety, of fear, of frustration, of hope, and so on. All of these fall away from us, and they cannot touch us because we have gone beyond their power through the penetration of thought. With the penetration of thought, then we have arrived at the stream, we have reached the stream, and we are in the stream. So being in the stream is like knowing where you are and knowing where your destination is. So it is as if we are working and we are somewhere, and we know if we walk for another hour, then we will get to Wat Ba Sukato. So we are in the process of going somewhere, we know where we are and we know where that is. So this is the developing of the true practice, of the practice of the path. And in the developing of the practice of the path, we see all things clearly. So we can comprehend the nature of all things. So all things that arise, all things that manifest, all things that appear in the world, in experience, are understood. So there is a constant learning, a constant teaching, and a constant purification from these things. So formerly people told us how to be happy. People said, do this and you will be happy. People said, if you do that, then you'll be unhappy, so don't do it. People said, do this, go to the temple and do this, and you will get merit. And if you do that, you'll have demerit. But now, when we practice the path, then we see all of these as actualities. We see the actuality of these things for ourselves. And so we don't have to pay attention to what other people say anymore. We don't have to follow what they say anymore. But we see merit and we see demerit. We see virtue. Virtue is seeing all things clearly. And we see demerit. We see evil, which is to be blind to what things really are, the way things really are. We see religion, the true religion, which is not having suffering, being beyond suffering and happiness. So we understand all of these things through the process of purification, which is a process of seeing phenomena, seeing them as they are, seeing them according to reality, and a constant penetration, deepening of penetration of all phenomena. And this is the development of the path, the process of development of the path, which is like, it is called being in the stream. So we are in the stream, we are flowing with the stream, which takes us according to its own momentum to a certain destination, to a destination which is certain, which is there waiting. So this is the practice which awaits all human beings who develop the practice of satipatthana, the practice of awareness through the body, awareness through the mind, awareness of bodily phenomena, bodily acting, of mental phenomena, developed through these stages of knowing Rup, knowing Nam, knowing the action of body, the action of mind as they are, having the beginning of release, and then the true entering into the path of the penetration of thought, of really seeing thought, and the falling away of delusion, which happens at that point, and then the development of the path, which is a matter for oneself from that point on. Entering into the true path and the practice of the true path has its own momentum. It has a weight. It is like a car rolling downhill, or like an avalanche, if you like. It's something that is not stoppable, so it cannot go back. There is no backward movement. There is only the forward movement until the destination, which is to be non-dukkha, to be non-suffering in its completest sense. And so it's like there is a stream and we build a dam, and formerly the water flowed in this direction. We build a dam, so now the water flows in the other direction. Formerly it was easy to think. Formerly it was easy to be caught up in thought. Formerly it was easy to be caught up in suffering and all its manifestations, both the unpleasant manifestations and the pleasant manifestations of suffering, the ordinary suffering and the happiness, which is the pleasant manifestation of suffering. And now it is very, very hard to be caught up in thought. Now it is very, very difficult to be caught up in suffering. Now it is easy to be caught up in the freedom, the freeing. So there is a process of freeing. That is the process of developing the path, of the momentum of the path, is a knowing of phenomena with complete accuracy, knowing phenomena as they are with no delusion, and a freeing until the destination. So consider that for me, Luang Por Tian has been the true teacher, and now, like any true disciple of any true teacher, I am independent. So I take his technique, the technique that he taught me, and I use this to teach others. But I'm not just teaching a technique, and the technique in itself, as a technique, as a mechanical thing, has no meaning. But I'm teaching people to develop awareness and to develop in this way through these stages. So I'm not teaching people just to understand, like a teacher teaches students in the ordinary sense, just to know about this and to know about that, to understand what is suffering and to understand what is not suffering. But I am teaching people to be. I'm not teaching them to be this or be that. I'm teaching people to be non-suffering, to be the cessation of suffering, which is the cessation of being. So this is my work or my activity nowadays. Paul was just we'll talk another hour later on in the day, but Luang Por was just we'll say praising freedom, and most of us don't praise freedom because we don't really know freedom. We know very little of even a taste of freedom. What we know is enslavement, and so only somebody who has really tasted freedom, has really immersed into freedom and become freedom, will really praise freedom with happiness. So it is like we wrap ourselves in chains all our life, and when we come to really practice, we begin to move against those chains. And when we achieve freedom, the chains begin to fall away, and the chains progressively fall away until there is no more chains and nothing to be chained. So we'll talk further this afternoon. Now, for the next hour, I will speak in continuation of what we spoke about this morning, the study and practice of Dharma, and the various stages of this study and practice. So I will speak taking responsibility for what I say and for the meaning of what I say. So I don't speak from analysis or study or thought in the ordinary sense, but I speak from the experience of phenomena of nature and the experience of nature itself. So I will speak about the continuing stages of the practice. Say that we speak from knowing the phenomena of nature, or knowing the true Dharma, or knowing the characteristic of the Dharma, the way things are, the actuality of things, the way things are without any human conceiving and imagining added to them. So I refer back to this practice and to the various stages of the practice of developing sati, and specifically the practice of developing sati using the movements of the body. And this develops through various stages in a natural progression. It has a natural unfolding. So the practice is the unfolding or the penetration deeper and deeper into the nature of things. And it develops according to nature, and very much so in this kind of practice. And nature is our teacher. So we practice as close to nature or as much in accordance with nature as possible. And nature is our teacher. Nature is what leads us forward through the various levels and stages of the practice. When I say that nature teaches us, nature is our teacher, this means that in developing the practice of sati, developing awareness through the movement, we are studying nature, we are watching nature, we are watching experience and penetrating the nature of experience, the characteristics of experience, so that whatever arises, it becomes an instruction, a teaching for us. So from the beginning we watch the movements of the body, we watch the movements of the mind, and we see the various phenomena that arise as bodily phenomena, that arise as mental phenomena, and especially we see suffering. We see suffering, and suffering teaches us. We see anger, greed, delusion, and these become our teachers. We see what is correct or what is right, and that teaches us. And we see what is wrong, what is incorrect, what is harmful, and this teaches us also. So formerly we thought that all of experience, everything that was experienced, was us. It was us, or it was ours. It was our experience. We were the center, we were the subject, we were the bearer, we were the thinker, the hearer, the knower, the feeler. We were the hoper, the one that was anxious, the one that was happy, and so on. Formerly, all experience had this characteristic, was tinted or tainted by this selfness that was touched all experience, and there was no experience that was not touched by the self. Now, as we learn from nature, we see that these various phenomena are not us. They are not a self. They are not something that can be a self or can be a belonging of a self. They are not something that can be the experience of a self, can be possessed by a self, nor can they be a self in themselves. But they are natural phenomena that arise, persist, and pass away according to natural conditions, which are autonomous. The conditions are autonomous, and the phenomena themselves, which we took as our experience or as us, are also autonomous. For the beginning, the origin of the stage of practice of actuality, of things as they really are, of nature as it really is what I have described as seeing thought or penetrating thought. This is not seeing thought the way that we did before. This is not seeing or knowing thought or knowing the mind as it's thinking, but this is a penetration into what has been closed, what has been covered over within the phenomena of thought, so that it involves the knowing and seeing of thought. The knowing and seeing of thought develop together, move together, and when we have this penetration, it is like an opening of what was closed before, and when what was hidden before is revealed, we know that it was hidden before, that we never saw it before, and we know that now it is revealed. Like a door that we didn't know exists suddenly opens, and our understanding is completely transformed. So this is what happens with the penetration, the seeing of thought. This is seeing the nature of thought, we can put it that way, seeing the characteristic of thought, comprehending the characteristic of thought, not in an intellectual way. It is a revelatory or transforming experience. When this happens, when this opening occurs, many things fall away in that time, and when those things fall away, we know that those things have fallen away, and so we know the result, we know the fruit at that point, so that not everything falls away, but some things fall away at that point. So we know what has fallen away, and we know what is still to be done. So this is the beginning of existing, practicing within actuality, what is called paramatta, the way things really are, not covered over by the habitual, persistent conceiving of the mind which was occurring before, which we didn't know about, which we never saw until it ceased. It is as if all our experience, we have been seeing what is in actuality a root of a tree, a root along the ground, and because the light is dim or our eyes are not so good, we have always thought it was a snake. So we have been afraid of this. We've been afraid of it, something very dangerous and very poisonous. And so we are in this state of fear and being disturbed and captivated by this fear, this object of fear, in a sense hypnotized by it, by what we take to be a snake. And then one day the light becomes very bright, or bright enough, and we see that it isn't a snake at all, that it's just a root of a tree. And so all that fear and that kind of being hypnotized and being caught up in fear and trembling disappears instantly when we see what it really is that we're dealing with. So this is a similar kind of thing, that everyone knows that what we call kilesa, or defilements, what we call lust and desire and hatred, what we call anger and so on. Everyone knows that these things are not good things. Everyone thinks that they know these things. But that kind of knowing isn't really correct, because it can't be used. Because even though we think we know these things, that we know these things are really bad and harmful, yet we are subject to these things continually. Because it is like we don't really see what they really are. So it is like seeing what is a root and taking it for a snake. So one day, in the mind, the brightness occurs that allows us to have this penetrating seeing. So we see actuality as it is, and then we see that these things are not the way we thought they were before. And formerly we were under their power. We were controlled by them. We were moved by them. We were disturbed and manipulated and exploited by them, because we took them to be ourself, and we took them to be something that could be a self, could be a belonging of a self. We didn't really see them as they really are. And when we really penetrate thought, then we see these phenomena as natural phenomena, just like the root in the forest, the root spreading from a tree in the forest. And we see that it has no vestige, no possibility of being a self, of being a person, or being something that belongs to a person, something that can be inside a person, something that can be a personal possession, something that can be a mortal condition. And so our being, our experience is changed radically, in the same way as if we were terrified all our life of something, and we live with this terror all the time, and we suddenly see what it really is, the terror disappears. We have a fundamental transformation of experience.
ลักษณะของความเห็นนี่นะถ้าประมาณ
Example, another metaphor or simile for the penetration to actuality, to really making true contact with nature. It's like having an eye. It's like the difference between a sighted person and a blind person. When we have sight, as most of us, if not all of us who are listening right now have, then we can live our life in a very adequate, and very capable and very coping way. Wherever we go, we see where we're going. We see if there's a hole somewhere, we see the hole and we don't fall in. We see where the bridge is and where the river is. We see the road, we see the traffic, and so on. So we should take this example seriously, that you can imagine what it's like, or you can try to imagine what it's like to be blind and to have to move around this world and live in this world without the use of the eye faculty. So when we have the eye, sitting here, we know who this is Tan Jamrat, this is Tan Itzara. We know the people around us. We recognize everything around us, and we are not subject to danger of bumping into things, falling into things, being bitten by things, dying very, very easily. So the penetration to nature is similar. What happens, or what is involved, is the opening of an internal eye, the opening of not the eye of awareness that we have been developing in the early stages of practice, but the eye of insight into the characteristic of nature, the seeing, the direct perception of nature. It's called vipassana. It's called, in the formula, it is called seeing anicca, dukkha, anatta, as not seeing anicca here and dukkha here and anatta here every now and then, but seeing anicca, dukkha, anatta as necessary in every bit of experience, as present in every bit of experience, in the same way as to expand, in the same way as we know that all circles are round and anything that is a circle must be round. So we see that anything that is an experience, anything that is experienced must be anicca, dukkha, anatta. This is called the eye of vipassana, the eye of panya. When we have this internal eye, then we recognize all of the things of experience, all the aspects of experience, and before we never recognized them, we never saw them as they actually are, we never saw them as they really are. So now we see suffering as suffering. Formerly we saw suffering as happiness, and now we see happiness as happiness. Formerly we didn't know what happiness really was. So now we see all the different phenomena, all the characteristics, the nature, the structural conditions of experience, and these are available to view. These can be seen because the eye that sees them is active. The eye that sees them has arisen and opened, and formerly it was closed, it was inactive, it was unarisen. So when with the arising of the eye there is an ending of doubt and uncertainty. We no longer have the kind of uncertainty and doubt that is inescapable for someone in whom the eye has not arisen and is not active. In the same way as a blind person simply must be subject to inescapable perpetual doubt as to what is around him, what is coming close, what is here, what is there, the way things really are, the way things really look. And as long as he is blind, it is not possible for him to know. And similarly, until we penetrate to actuality through, in this way of practice, through these stages of practice, the penetration of thought, the seeing of thought according to reality, then we are like that blind person, incapable of seeing, incapable of knowing what the world really is. With the penetration of thought, with the penetration to actuality, to nature as it really is, then we arrive at the condition of naturalness or normality. What can be called naturalness, what can be called normality. It is like being as if in a war we were in we held the high ground, we have a superior position, or it's like being in a very cool, shady, a delightful place after struggling across burning deserts for all our life up till then. So it's a kind of pleasantness we've never known before, because we've never known this kind of normality before. Formerly, we had to work very hard in development. We had to take care about our behavior, which is called observing ethics, observing sila, observing morality. We had to consider carefully what we did so we didn't do the wrong thing. And we had to work to develop generosity. We had to do it as a policy, intentionally. We had to work developing sati, awareness, developing samadhi. Samadhi means steadiness of mind, the mind being very, very steady. And we worked at considering and observing, thinking about this, contemplating that, to develop knowing, to develop wisdom. Now, when we become normal, when we arrive at normality, we don't have to work at any of these things, because these things are now like the eye. They are the eye. They work by themselves. So now, ethics, morality, sila, it takes care of us. We don't have to take care of it. We don't have to struggle and try to work out what the right thing to do is, because whatever the right thing to do is, that does itself, in the same way as a tree knows how to grow, or a leaf knows how to fall from a tree when the time is right. So all of these things, sila, ethics, sati, awareness, samadhi, steadiness of mind, panya, knowing, they all function automatically, autonomously, just like the eye functions automatically, autonomously. You don't have to make an effort, you don't have to struggle, you don't have to make any intention. Just like right now, the ear hears without an intention to hear, the eye sees. There is a visual field without the intention to see. It's simply, that is what it means to have a faculty. The faculty works according to nature autonomously. Similarly, the eye of insight, the eye of Dharma, the eye that sees nature, it works automatically, autonomously. And so we have normality, we have nature as our ground, as the ground of our being at this point. So that it is like the water or the earth, whenever anything is thrown into it or thrown upon it, it is not changed and altered by it. If something is thrown onto the earth remains the earth. The earth responds to that thing the way the earth does. So it is, if something appears in our mind, it is not a problem. The same way as something thrown into the water, thrown into a lake or a river, it doesn't distort or change the lake. The lake is still a lake, and the water is still the water. Similarly, anger, greed, delusion, all the disturbing things, happiness, unhappiness, all the things that tormented us formerly, now they are no longer a problem. We don't have to suffer them, we don't have to endure them. We don't have to endure suffering them, we don't have to endure being happy about them. So these things can come and go by themselves without causing any disturbance to the sila, to the sati, to the samadhi and panya, which is like the eye that is present right now. So the sila, sati, samadhi, panya, they function without being disturbed by these things. Whatever things arise, they arise in nature, they don't arise as us, in us. And they don't require any effort of suppression, any effort. All they require is that they are seen. And the seeing is automatic, the seeing is autonomous. The things that I've been saying are a kind of metaphor. I've been talking in terms, using metaphors and similes, because when we talk about true nature, when we talk about the Satya Dharma, the true nature of things as they are, actuality as it truly is, there are no words, there is no language to directly convey this to the listener. he can only know this through his own experience. So we have to use metaphors and similes. So it's like, suppose we very much want to come to this place here, Basukato, Wat Basukato, and we've never been here, so formally we may think and imagine what it's like at Wat Basukato, but whatever our imaginings are, they will be completely different from the experience of actually being here. So we have ideas and thoughts and images, but when we actually travel and come here, when we're here we know it in a completely different way. We know the atmosphere, we know the feeling, the smell, we know the people, we know the objects, we know the place intimately. And if our desire has been to get here, then that desire to get here no longer exists, since we are here already. So similarly, formally we think what is the real Dharma, what is real Sila, what is real Samadhi, what is real Panya, what is real Sati, what is Satya Dharma. We have these questionings. Until we see it for ourselves, then we can't know it. There's no way of knowing it. So we can't know it through listening to somebody or getting some description or studying in a book or thinking it out or imagining. It is not possible. So it is like a blind person trying to imagine what the color green is like, a person blind from birth. There is no substitute for the experience. So when we have the experience, when we really arrive at true nature, then we don't have to ask anyone else. It makes no sense. It is impossible to ask somebody else. In the same way as when you look at a leaf right now and you see the color green, to go and ask somebody what green is like makes absolutely no sense. It would be an insane thing to do when you have an eye that works and the color green is in front of you. So here the situation is similar. I am speaking in an abbreviated or shortened form. I am talking briefly about the truth. And to really talk about the truth would be to say a great deal, because when we enter into truth, into actuality, then there is a very, very great deal of experience. There is a great deal to be experienced, a great deal to know and to see through many, many stages. And we don't have the time here, nor is it necessarily profitable for people in early stages of practice to go into any great detail about this, because when we arrive at actuality, at the real Dharma, the true nature, then the world that opens up is a whole world to be experienced with much knowledge to be gained. And this, if anyone that arrives at this point will enter this process for themselves. So now I speak in brief to make the major points which can be made, which can be profitable to the listener.
ที่ว่าถ้าจะพูดถึงอาการของมันก็มีขั้นตอนเหมือนกับเราเรียนหนังสือการหัดอ่านหัดเขียนนี่มันเป็นลำดับนึงถ้ามันหัดเป็นแล้วเขียนเป็น
The developing of this process is like a learning process. So if we want to learn to read a book, first we learn to write. So we practice writing, and when we can write, when we have practiced correctly, then we enter into the practice of reading the book. So similarly, there are the various stages in practice which we have to go through, so that in the beginning stages we begin with developing awareness to watch the body, watch the mind, and this is the beginning of the various levels and stages of knowledge which constitutes the developing of the practice which leads to the penetration of nature. Various stages of knowledge that arise. Each stage of knowledge is a acquisition to proof or evidence of something, proof or evidence that proves this knowledge, so that when we have the proof that is correct, when we have the evidence that is correct within our experience, then we reach that level of knowledge. So it is like if we ask 5 and 5 are 10, true, then we know that is true. If we say a 5 and 5, 11, we know that is not true. So we have the knowledge, the proof within us that 5 and 5 are not 11, 5 and 5 are 10. So the knowledge, the stages of knowledge of knowing Rup, knowing Nam, of knowing Anicca, Dukkha, Anatta, of knowing conventionality, or knowing religion, and so on. These are all words. The experience is something else. But with all these stages, all these knowledge, all these levels of knowledge, are a matter of reaching the evidence that convinces us within ourselves. And so the mind accepts the knowledge when it is convinced of the truth of that thing, not through a process of thinking, but through a natural process of the development of mind and the direct perception of aspects of actuality, leading finally to the direct perception of actuality as it really is.
ที่ว่าหลักฐาน
It's not like evidence or proof of things in the world. In the practice, the evidence or proof, the experience that convinces us, which is the watching, which leads to us truly seeing something. So we are convinced of this thing within and by ourselves. This brings about change. It brings about change without our having to attempt to bring about that change. So that things fall away, things fall off us, things don't stick to us. Things that formerly could enter and stick to us, enter within us, or become our possession, no longer can. So that this is the level of being convinced, the level of true knowledge that we experience through the development of the various levels of knowledge that arise in the practice and in the development of the practice. To the whole movement and whole direction of the practice is the gaining of proof, of conviction that this is dukkha, this is the suffering or the burden, and this is the source of the burden, the source of suffering, and this is a cessation. And this process is a process of the falling away, the lessening and losing of power of unwholesome and things over us, until at the final point, all the phenomena that constitute dukkha, all of the phenomena that constitute the burden, the weight that we carry that makes us be, all of that falls away, all of that surrenders. So all of that is ceased, all of that ceases, all of that becomes extinct. So the practice reaches this culmination. So the practice may be a very long one. Throughout this whole practice, we experience the structure of knowing dukkha, knowing its origin, and knowing its cessation. And we have many things that we learn. We know and learn many things until we reach this point of the surrender of dukkha in all its forms. And when dukkha surrenders in all its forms, then what we say is, there isn't anything, there is nothing. Or things are as they are, things are as they are, and there is nothing apart from things being as they are. So that if we talk in the formal language, this is called the characteristic, the condition of arising and ceasing, of birth and death, of appearing and disappearing. And this is what actuality now is, with nothing else apart from the arising and ceasing, and nothing apart from that, nothing beyond that. So the phenomena of experience and nothing outside or beyond the phenomena of experience, and all the phenomena of experience subject to rise and cessation. And all the forms of dukkha, all the forms of suffering, everything that constitutes a burden ceases and does not arise again. And that is the ending of the practice, that is the ending of dukkha, that is the ending of that is the ending of all our work in this world.
ก็เลย
When we reach this point, then there is nothing to be done. There is nothing that we need to do. We have nothing that we need to do anymore, and everything works by itself from then on. So when I say that I respect Luang Por Tien, it is not because of that his conduct or his being or his behavior is very impressive or something very marvelous to me, but because he was the one that indicated and pointed out this point, this culmination of dukkha, and indicated the form of practice, the form of work within oneself that would lead to this. And so when one reaches this, one has no more need of referring to a teacher or referring to anyone else, since there is nothing more that one needs to do.
ที่มัน
Characteristic, the condition, the nature, the actuality of that we call arising and ceasing of phenomena, with nothing outside, with nothing beyond, nothing not subject to that arising and ceasing. This culmination occurs because of the developing of sati, the developing of awareness. And so we cannot make that happen directly. Just as we cannot make the penetration of thought, the access to nature, to such a dharma happen directly, nor any of the levels of knowledge above or below that. All those levels of knowledge arise, all the levels of insight arise because of the developing of awareness. The developing of awareness is something we can do, but the insights, the penetration of thought, the seeing of thought, and all the levels of knowledge beyond, culminating in the characteristic of appearance and disappearance, speaking as to give it its conventional description, to that point of the cessation of dukkha, the cessation of the burden completely. All of these things, all of these levels of knowledge, all of these insights, all of these changes, radical changes in experience, radical transformations of the world occur by themselves. They arise in themselves, by themselves. They cannot be made to happen. But without the developing of awareness, they do not happen. So it is only through the developing of awareness. So we say we do this thing over here, and that thing over there happens. If we don't do this thing over here, that thing over there doesn't happen. And this is true of all the levels of knowledge, all the levels of release, from the first taste of release right through to true release, and right through to complete release. This is true of all the levels, all the stages. When we reach the end point, then we know that this is the capacity of every human being. Every human being, whatever their origin, whatever their culture, whatever their education, whatever their intelligence in worldly terms, whatever their religion, their system of beliefs, every human being has this same culmination as the guidance, as the indication of true development. True development leads to this point. And if we don't reach this point, true development hasn't been completed. And if we develop in a different way, it is not true development. It is not development into nature, into becoming nature, becoming true nature. And so knowing I can assert this with complete confidence, make a complete assertion of this truth. And when we know this, nature provides the answer to anything that we need to know about nature, about the workings of nature, which we can call it the law of nature. Everything according to the law of nature we know. Everything is clear and accessible. Everything is present to us. So that if people ask us a question about physics or relativity, we cannot answer. But any question about true nature, the nature of experience, the world as it really is, that is, experience as it really is, we can answer, we have accessible to us. So I would like to really assert this with full confidence, and I would like to invite or challenge any listener that is interested in this to set about developing awareness for themselves. And as I say, because of the development of awareness, these other things occur. These other things cannot be made to occur directly, but through the development of awareness, they can occur in their own time, at their own pace. They cannot be compelled, and when they come, they cannot be stopped either. So I challenge the listener, or invite the listener, to experiment for himself, to make the effort, make the experiment for himself of developing awareness fully, developing awareness of the body, awareness of the mind in its fullest sense, and to see these things for himself, and to develop to becoming a true human being, and to the culmination of the true human being for itself. Path, marga, the fruit, the result, phala, and nibbana, extinction. And these actualities constitute the true essence, the true being of every human being, the true development of every human being, and they are necessary for every human being. If we have not developed to really know these for ourselves, to know the path as it actually is for ourselves, to know the fruit as it actually is for ourselves, and to know extinction as it actually is in and by and for ourselves, then our work is not finished, and if we don't do this work, then our life has been wasted, because we have not developed to be a real human being. We have not developed what a human being must be, and what the real duty, the real work of a human being, the real responsibility of a human being. So I make this challenge to the listener that if you are interested, to set about developing awareness. If we are practicing right now, if we have been practicing, then we need to continue the practice in accordance with the guidance of the truth. That means that I assert that what I've been talking about is the truth, is the way nature truly is the levels of understanding and realization that are available to us. And if we have not known these things yet, then they await to be known, so that we have not arrived at them, or we have gone off on a tangent, so that everyone must know this point, which we call nibbana, or extinction, or rising and cessation of all phenomena with no remainder, or the ending of suffering. And until we know this point, then we don't know, we have not completed our work, we have not finalized our duty. And if we haven't even begun to do this work, then we have a lot of work ahead of us. Be more specific. To put something that we've been talking about more specifically, we can say that the culmination of our work is not simply the arising and ceasing and future arising of Nam and Rup, but the cessation with no future arising of Nam and Rup. So I would like to offer as a motto or a credo for the practitioner a very brief statement of our work, which is to have watchingness, to develop awareness so we have watchingness. When we have watchingness, we watch the conditions of body and conditions of mind, the characteristic of body and characteristic of mind. If we watch, then we can see. So when we see the conditions of body, we see the conditions of mind, see the characteristic of body, see the characteristic of mind. Don't go and be those things. Don't go and be happiness and unhappiness, satisfaction and dissatisfaction. Don't go and be anxiety and hope and weariness and agitation and so on. So we practice this, we develop the seeing. And when we see completely, when the seeing is full, the seeing is complete, the seeing is total, then we don't have to be anything at all. So this is this is the point that our work works towards. So we need to develop in this work so that we have developed enough so that we can stand alone, we can stand and do our work. We have a place of stability within ourselves. We have a foundation within ourselves upon which we can stand and develop until we reach the final point where, seeing completely, we don't have to be anything at all, and we aren't anything at all, and then we don't have to stand and we don't have to do anything. Say the cessation of Nam and Rup, without any remainder, without any future arising. It is quite probable that you don't know what this is, and to really know it, you have to know it for yourself. But we can say that Nam Rup is Sanya, Sankhara, Vedana, Vijnana. So it is, we'll say, experience from the inside. We can call it that, experience from the inside. And this arises because of the sense bases, because of the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body and mind, and because of visual objects, sights, sounds, taste, touches, smells, and mental objects. And the cessation without remainder, without future arising, is that these bases, the eye, ear, tongue, nose, body and mind, sight, sounds, tastes, touches, smells, and mental objects, the connection between those things and all states of being is broken, so that all the eye and sights and the ear and sounds and so on, all these things work automatically as a natural process, and there is no the connection, the movement that has led from these things to any form of mental conception and any form of emotion subsequent to that mental conception has ceased. So from then on, there is no more acting, there is no more doing, but there is, as it were, the movement of behavior, the movement of activity that is not an acting, not a doing, that does not have anything to do with an actor, a doer, an agent, nothing to do with anything that can be called a person, anything that can be called a self, anything that we understand as a person, anything that we understand as a self. And this is called nature flowing on and on. This is the onward flow of nature by itself, with no obstruction and nothing intruded into nature or placed upon nature, no distortion. This hour is like packing up and leaving to go to Singapore. It's like it's a final talk, so it's a transition from being here to returning to our ordinary, what we call our ordinary life, in the form of intensive practice or retreat practice for 10 days, according to our character and our capacities, according to our understanding and our level of development. And in 10 days, at the very least, we should have enough experience to know what sati is, what sampajanya is, what thought is, and so we at least become familiar with the elements of the practice of satipatthana in the developing of awareness. In whatever technique we use, these will be the same elements. Awareness, being present to oneself, recollecting oneself, this being in the present and with awareness and feeling in the present, and the movements of the body, the movements of the mind, these do not exist only at Wat Pa Sukato. They are present wherever you are. They are with you, or they constitute you. the movements of the body are standing, sitting, lying and walking. The movements of the mind is the arising and passing away of thought. And these are available to us wherever we are. So any hour, any minute, any second that we wish to know the movement of the body, the movements of the mind, then we can know the movement of the body, the movement of the mind for that hour, minute or second. So the knowing of these movements, the movement of the body and especially the movement of the mind, the movement of thought, this is up to our own decision, our own volition. Whenever we want to know it, we can know it then. Awareness with the movements of the body and developing awareness with the movements of the mind, it is like you sitting here writing right now. If you write something wrong, if you make a mistake in writing, then you recognize it immediately and you erase it, you wipe it out, and you write the correct thing that you really intended. So similarly in practice, when we fall away from correct practice, then we are aware of what is happening, we are aware that we are going the wrong way, and we come back to the proper path of practice. So there's no great problem. There's no great doing it incorrectly, practicing incorrectly. Incorrect practice teaches us correct practice. It is because of incorrect practice that we know what correct practice is. The movements of the body is implacable and inevitable. The body must move, and it cannot not move. The large movements of the body are walking, standing, sitting and lying down. And the subtle movements of the body, the blinking of the eye, the breath going in and out, the swallowing of saliva, the turning of the head, the reaching, picking up and so on, the smaller movements. So the body is in movement at all times. It does not cease movements. So any time we wish to be aware of the movements of the body, we can be aware of the movements of the body. We don't have to come to Wat Ba Sukato to be aware of the movements of the body. The movements of the body do not exist here at Ba Sukato and not on the bus to Bangkok or on the plane back to Singapore or as we go about our life in Singapore. Developing of sati, that is satipatthana, the foundations of sati, the establishing of sati. As I've said in previous talks, it is like an eye inside us. That eye inside us is in some ways, in many ways, similar to the fleshly eye, the eye in our head. The eye in our head works according to nature, but when we want to see something, we can see it. If we have the wish to look at something and see it, then the eye is there and functioning, so we can use that eye to see what we wish to see. So the eye inside is similar. If we wish to see something, the eye inside can see what we wish to see. If we wish to see our bodily movements, then we can be aware of the bodily movements, not with the eye in the head, but with the eye inside. If we wish to see the thinking mind, the movement of thought, then we can see that. If we wish to see the arising of happiness and the arising of unhappiness, the arising of pleasure and pain, the arising of suffering, then we can see that. The eye is there, it is available for use, it is available for work, it is available for exercising, and the objects which the eye can see, the moving body, the moving mind, all the phenomena, manifestations of the body and the mind, they are continually available. So the object of meditation is always available. Until we die, the meditation object is with us. Give the opportunity to awareness, to sati sampajanya. We will give it the opportunity to be present, to be active. That is up to us. It is our own decision. If we want to use it, we can use it. And that is called giving it the opportunity to exercise, to grow. So it is like planting a tree. We plant the tree, and we plant it in such a position so that it can get sunlight. And if it gets sunlight, then it can grow very tall. So it's called, we give the tree the opportunity to have the sunlight, and then it does the growing by itself. So similarly with sati, it is up to us to give it the opportunity to grow. If we wish to use it at any time we wish to see to be aware of, to contemplate, to know the movements of body, movements of mind, then we can do it. The moving body, moving mind is always available. The eye of awareness is always available to be exercised. For any second, any minute, any hour that we use it, then we have that benefit, that degree of growth.
เราให้ความ
If we give justice to sati, if we give sati the opportunity to work, then it becomes stronger. If we give the adama, the opposite of dharma, the flow of delusion, the flow of the mind being deceived, if we give this the opportunity to be active, then it grows. If sati grows, then it takes over our existence and protects us. If adama grows, if anger, greed, delusion grow, then they take over our existence and destroy it. They take over our life and destroy it. It is like we can call it the field of Buddha, or the forest of Buddha, or we can call it. It means the characteristic of awakening, the nature of awakening, the essence of awakening. We can consider this as being like a seed that can be planted. If we plant it and take care of it, then it grows and flourishes and flowers and fruits in awakening. Or if we like, then we can plant the seed of its opposite, greed, hatred, and delusion, and then we will receive the flower and eat the fruit of greed, hatred, and delusion. So this is up to us. We should consider and estimate in each day how much of that day is spent with alertness and awareness, with those aspects, those elements of awakening, the awareness, the alertness of mind, the knowing of the body, knowing of mind, in movement, in manifestation, and how much is spent in the flow, the habitual flow of its opposite, all the forms of attraction, all the forms of resistance, all the forms of confusion. So we should estimate this for ourselves and draw the appropriate conclusions for ourselves. Luang Por now refers to a story from the scriptures where the Buddha went to see a rich man, and he gave him a Dharma talk, and he said he told him about satta, virya, sati, samadhi, panya. Satta means confidence and trust. Virya means energy, the energy of the mind and energy of the body. Sati means awareness. Samadhi means steadiness of mind. Panya means knowing. And he described these in terms of a field, this rich man's field. So satta was like the field in which you grow the rice, and virya was like the rainwater, the water that from which the rice seeds get sustenance, and sati was like the seeds, the rice, and so on. And so that you get sustenance from the rice in this way. But even though you get sustenance and you can live, you get rice to eat, you are still subject to old age, suffering and death. But there is a field of the deathless Dharma, the field of the deathless. And it has these same 5 elements, but not the elements of the field, the rainwater, the seed, and so on. But here it's satta, virya, sati, samadhi, panya, confidence and faith in the teaching, energy in practicing the teaching, awareness which is developed, steadiness of mind which develops from the developing of awareness, and the knowing in which the development of the practice culminates through various stages and levels until final release from old age, sickness and death. So that is the field, and the growing within that field of the amata Dharma, the deathless Dharma. Luang Por talks about satta, virya, sati, samadhi, panya, about this field and the growth within the field to the development of the real fruit of the deathless Dharma, the merging into nature, the being in the true nature, which doesn't die. Just like nature around us doesn't die. The trees die, the fish die, but nature doesn't die. To merge in with that, to become that. When Luang was teaching about this, he doesn't mean that we should walk jongrom and sit doing the hand movements all day. This is just a means, a technique, which can be useful. What he means in developing in these 5 aspects is to practice within the mind, to come back to oneself, to recall to oneself, and to practice in the right way, which means to develop this watching, this knowing, awareness, knowing of phenomena, bodily phenomena and mental phenomena, to not deny, not resist, and to not indulge, not chase after and try to grab hold of and consume experience, but to watch what happens, see what happens, and to not indulge in either the attraction or the resistance to them, which means to indulge in the attraction is to indulge in pleasure and satisfaction, in happiness, and not to indulge in the resistance to phenomena is it means not indulging in dislike, dissatisfaction, hatred and aversion. Phenomena in their nature are either pleasant or unpleasant, and if we don't watch, if we are not wise in our life, then pleasant phenomena we react to by indulging in happiness in its various forms, indulging in the pleasure which arises in the mind if we let it, and unpleasant phenomena lead us to aversion, hatred. So that is not the way to practice to develop the deathless Dharma. So the way of practice is not a matter of formal meditation, but it's a matter of this detachment, this wisdom in the mind to watch phenomena, to learn from phenomena, to develop awareness through the watching, but to do it without this indulging in satisfaction and dissatisfaction, this indulging in attraction and resistance. Luang wishes to repeat that to practice in the mind, to have the mind developing within the practice, to be following the teaching of the Buddhas according to satipanya, according to awareness, wisdom, intelligence, true intelligence within ourselves, means to stay on that middle way between indulgence in pleasure and indulgence in pain. That phenomena, particularly the phenomena that we notice, the phenomena that come to us very strongly, we react to habitually with liking or disliking. And if we fall into the various forms of liking or various forms of disliking, then our mind is not on the way of practice. But for the mind to be in the way of practice, for the practice to be occurring within the mind, is to know the objects, know the phenomena, but to not indulge, not to follow the liking, and not indulge, not to follow the disliking. Then before he offers as a suitable credo, a motto or credo for the practitioner, to watch. If you watch, you see, and when you see, don't be. This means to expand it now. If you watch satisfaction and dissatisfaction, you can see satisfaction and dissatisfaction. If you don't watch, you won't see them. You just dwell in it. So when you see satisfaction arising, then don't be satisfied. Don't go and be the satisfaction. Don't be satisfied. If you see dissatisfaction arising, then don't go and be dissatisfied. So this process, watching, seeing, and not being. If we watch, then we see. If we see, we don't have to be. So this is up to us. It begins with watching. Without this watching inside, without the use of the eye inside, we cannot see. But when we see, we don't have to be that thing. Luang Por says that when we are not that thing, when satisfaction, happiness, suffering, whatever it is, we'll say happiness. Happiness comes, and we watch, so we see it. And when we see it, we don't go and be happy. We're not happy. We just see happiness, and we see it come and go by itself. That this is the path of practice, the true path of practice. This path is there all the time, but usually we don't walk on that path. Usually we don't step on that path. Usually we follow the indulging in the objects of awareness, the objects of the mind. We are falling into being these things, being happy, being unhappy, being anxious, being hopeful, being the thinker, being the thought. So when that is the case, we have fallen away from this path. So the path is there all the time. Whenever we want to step on that path, we can step onto it. And if we step on that path and continue to step on that path, then it will lead us by itself, because that path has a direction, it has its own momentum. So this is up to us. This is with us, it is our own decision, through our own effort, through our own volition, that we can dwell within this process of watching, seeing, and therefore not being. So Luang Por doesn't wish to speak in Pali language, or he tries to avoid it as much as possible. So watching, seeing, and not being. Watching means to have awareness, to have feeling, to have awareness. Seeing means to see the characteristics of things, to see happiness and unhappiness, see satisfaction and dissatisfaction, being pleased and being displeased, and so on. And not being these things, not being these phenomena, is the path. And the path needs to be developed. So when we can be on the path, when we find the path, then we need to understand that it requires development. To simply step on the path occasionally has little benefit. Probably it doesn't have no benefit, but it has little benefit. It has little benefit, especially compared with the benefit of developing the path. So the path needs to be developed. Develop means to do it a lot, to make something increase greatly. So we need to do this a lot. When we develop the path, marga, then it ultimately will arrive, because it is a path leading to this destination naturally. It will arrive at Nirodho, which means cessation. The cessation. With the cessation there is a clear seeing, the real seeing, the clear knowing, the real knowing.